You arrive quietly as the day begins to soften and the world around you grows still. Get yourself comfortable. There is nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. This moment is yours. Let your mind travel softly across the wide blue Pacific to the island of Kauaʻi. Some say it is among the oldest of the Hawaiian islands, a place of green mountains and gentle ocean and deep, restful stillness. And here, an old legend waits, carried across generations, whispered by elders, told to children as they drift into sleep. A story of unseen builders. The first stone wall appeared overnight. No one saw it being built. No one heard the sounds of construction. And yet, when the sun rose, there it stood, a wall of perfectly fitted stones, running along the edge of the taro fields where there had been only grass the evening before. A woman named Leilani was the first to notice. She had walked this path every morning since childhood, and that morning, the wall was simply there. She stopped, set down her basket, and looked. The stones were smooth, dark, volcanic rock, fitted together so precisely that no gaps remained between them, each stone seeming to know its place, as if it had always been meant to rest exactly there. Between the mountains, valleys curve softly, holding streams and waterfalls and mist. On the western coast, where the land slopes towards the sea, there is a village, a small village, homes built simply, with walls that let the breeze pass through, roofs thatched with dried grass, floors of packed earth that stay cool even in the warmth of afternoon. The people here live gently. They grow taro in terraced fields, watered by mountain streams. And they fish in the ocean and in an ancient fish pond built with stones stacked carefully in the shallow bay. Life moves slowly here, predictably. The sun rises from behind the mountains each morning and sets over the ocean each evening, and the days pass with a rhythm as steady as the waves. And yet there is something else, something the elders speak of quietly in the evenings when the fires burn low, the unseen builders. Leilani touched the wall that morning. The stone was cool beneath her palm, solid, real. She ran her hand along the surface, feeling the smoothness, the craftsmanship. And she wondered. By midday, others had come to see. Keahi, the fisherman, stood beside the wall with his arms crossed, not in anger or suspicion, but in quiet contemplation. His grandfather had told him stories, old stories, stories about small builders who worked in darkness. He had always thought they were just tales, the kind elders told to help children sleep. Now, he was less certain than before. An elder named Nalani approached. She moved slowly, leaning on a walking stick, and yet her eyes were bright, sharp, missing nothing. She studied the wall for a long time, touched it, felt the stones, traced the joints with her fingertips. And then she smiled. The Menehune, she said softly, or so some called them, the hidden ones, the quiet people who tend the land. The children were delighted. They ran alongside the wall, touching it, marveling, making up stories about tiny builders working by moonlight. The adults said little. They had heard the old tales, stories passed down through generations, stories of small hands that worked in darkness, stories of builders who came only when the island was quiet. And now, it seemed, perhaps the stories held some truth. That night, the village settled into sleep as it always did. Fires burned low, voices quieted, children were called inside. The trade winds moved through the palms, and the ocean breathed against the shore, and the island grew still. Keahi lay on his mat, listening. He had always been a light sleeper, waking often in the night. And tonight he was curious. The wall had appeared from nowhere. Someone or something had built it, and he wanted to know. He lay very still, breathing slowly, and he listened. The ocean, the wind, the rustling of leaves. And then, faintly, from somewhere near the forest edge, another sound. Tapping. Soft tapping, stone on stone, rhythmic, patient. Keahi's eyes opened. He did not move. He simply listened. The tapping continued for a long time, steady, unhurried, and with it, he thought he heard voices, not loud voices, soft murmurs, high-pitched, speaking in a language he did not recognize. He wanted to rise, to walk to the forest, to see what was happening. And yet something stopped him. Respect. The same respect his grandfather had taught him. Some things, his grandfather had said, are not meant to be seen. Some gifts are diminished by too much attention. So Keahi lay on his mat, and he listened. And eventually, the sounds faded, and he drifted into sleep. In the morning, there was more. A path, a stone path leading from the village towards the forest, where the night before there had been only dirt and grass. The stones were flat, smooth, placed carefully to create easy walking. Leilani found it when she went to gather water from the stream. The path began at the forest edge and wound gently upward, disappearing into the trees. She followed it for a short distance, marveling at the precision, the care, and then she stopped. The path would reveal itself in time. There was no need to rush. She returned to the village, and she told the others, and they came to see. Nalani touched the stones, nodding slowly, as if she had expected this. Kai, the young man who carved canoes, knelt beside the path, running his fingers along the joints between stones, and he saw something that amazed him. The stones fit together perfectly. No mortar, no binding, just weight and balance and an understanding of stone that seemed beyond ordinary knowing. Whoever built this understood their craft deeply. The children wanted to follow the path immediately to see where it led. And yet Nalani shook her head gently. "Not today," she said. "Today we simply notice. Today we say thank you." And so the villagers stood together, looking at the path, feeling grateful, and they whispered mahalo, thank you, to the air, to the island, to whoever had built this gift. The stories about the builders are old, older than the village, older than anyone's memory. Nalani knows them all. She learned them from her grandmother, who learned them from her grandmother, and so on, back through generations. In the stories, the builders are small, no taller than a child's knee, quick and light, with hands that are strong despite their size, hands that can lift stones that seem too heavy, hands that know exactly where each stone belongs. They have large eyes. The old tales say, eyes that can see in darkness, that can find the perfect stone even on a moonless night, that can judge weight and balance and fit with just a glance. They work together, always together, moving in coordination, communicating in soft, high voices, passing stones from hand to hand, building structures that last for centuries. Some say they do not eat as people eat. Some say they do not sleep as people sleep. In the stories, they simply work, night after night, year after year, tending the island, maintaining balance, shaping stone. Some say they live in caves deep in the mountains. Some say they live in hollow trees in the forest. Some say they have no homes at all, that they are always moving, always working, never resting. No one knows for certain, because in all the tellings, the builders do not reveal themselves. They work only when the island is quiet, only when there is stillness, only when people are sleeping and the night is deep. And they disappear before dawn, always before dawn, leaving only their work behind. Stone walls, paths, structures built with impossible precision, silent gifts, anonymous care, evidence of something gentle, something patient, something that tends without asking for recognition. Nalani tells the young ones that the builders, in all the old stories, work only when the island is quiet, when there is peace, when there is stillness. And so, she says, perhaps the village should honor the night, keep voices soft after sunset, let fires burn low, create the silence the stories speak of. This is not a rule, not a command, but a practice, a way of living in harmony with the island, a way of showing respect for whatever cares for this place. The young ones listen, and they understand, and they begin to move differently in the evenings, more quietly, more gently, finishing their play before darkness comes, helping to prepare evening meals without loud voices, sitting peacefully as the sun sets, creating the stillness the old tales describe. And the adults do the same. Arguments are set aside before nightfall. Work is completed before darkness. The transition from day to night becomes something thoughtful, intentional, a gift the village gives to whatever might be listening. And the island seems to respond. Three nights later, Keahi woke again to the sound of tapping. He lay still, listening, and this time he heard more. Not just tapping, but voices, clear voices, speaking that flowing language. And he heard something else, laughter, soft laughter, the sound of joy, of beings, or something like beings, enjoying their work, of community. He rose quietly, wrapped a cloth around his shoulders, and stepped outside. The village was dark. The moon was thin, offering little light. And yet there, at the forest edge, he saw them. Lights, small golden lights, moving between the trees. Not fire, something softer, something that glowed gently, like captured starlight, like fireflies, and yet steadier, more purposeful. Keahi stood frozen. His heart beat faster, not from fear, but from wonder. The lights moved in patterns, back and forth, coordinated, and with them he could see shapes, small shapes, figures no taller than his knee, moving quickly, their movements precise, economical, efficient. They were carrying stones, passing them from one to another, creating a line from the forest to the path. And at the path, others were placing the stones. One would kneel, testing the placement, adjusting slightly, and another would nod, and together they would settle the stone into position. And then the next stone would arrive, and the process would repeat over and over, with a rhythm that was almost musical, a dance of building, of creating, of tending. Keahi watched, barely breathing, afraid that any movement might disturb them. And yet slowly, carefully, he took a step closer, and then another. And one of the builders turned, looked directly at him. And Keahi saw the face clearly, small, round, with large dark eyes that reflected the golden light. A face that was kind, gentle, not afraid, not angry, just aware. The builder watched him for a long moment, and then it smiled. A small smile, an acknowledgement, a greeting. And then it turned back to its work, passing another stone down the line, continuing the rhythm, as if Keahi's presence, whilst noted, did not disturb them, as if they trusted him, as if they knew he would not interfere. Keahi stood there for a long time, watching them work, marveling at their coordination, their precision, their obvious joy in what they were doing. And eventually, as the night deepened, he returned to his home. He did not tell anyone immediately. The experience felt too precious, too private, too sacred. And yet the next evening, he told Nalani. And she listened, nodding, smiling, and she said, "They allowed you to see them. That is a gift. If the stories are true, a rare gift. It means they trust you. It means you have honored them properly." Keahi felt tears on his cheeks, and he understood that something had changed. He had been welcomed, acknowledged, made part of something larger than himself. The days that followed brought more changes. Small changes, quiet changes. The fish pond that Keahi tended, the one built long ago with stones stacked in the shallow bay, had been crumbling along one wall. Keahi had been planning to repair it. And yet one morning, he arrived to find the work already done. New stones had been added, large ones, fitted so precisely that the wall was stronger than it had been in years. He stood in the shallow water, looking at the stones, and he could see how they had done it. The builders, if that's what they were, had chosen stones with flat surfaces, placing them so the weight distributed evenly. They had wedged smaller stones into gaps, creating tightness, preventing movement. They had built in layers, each layer supporting the one above. And they had worked with the curve of the bay, not fighting the water's flow, but guiding it, using it, making it part of the structure's strength. It was masterful, perfect. And Keahi, who had fished these waters his entire life, felt humbled. These small builders, working in darkness, understood stone in ways he never would. They listened to it, felt its nature, worked with its willing cooperation rather than forcing it. He touched the wall gently, and he whispered, "Mahalo. Thank you." And that night, as the village slept, he heard the tapping again, and he smiled, and he rested deeply, knowing the island was being cared for. Kai spent his days working with wood, carving canoes, bowls, tools. He had learned from his uncle, who taught him to listen to the wood, to feel its grain, to understand what it wanted to become. One evening, Kai walked into the forest to select a tree for a new canoe. He moved slowly, respectfully, looking for the right trunk. The forest was quiet. The light filtered through the canopy in shades of green. The air smelled of earth and growing things. He followed the stone path, the one that had appeared, and it led him deep into the forest, deeper than he had gone before. And there, in a clearing, he found something unexpected. A grove of koa trees, tall, straight koa trees, perfect for canoe building, and beside them, stacked neatly, were stones, not a wall, not a path, just stones, arranged carefully, marking the grove, showing him where to find what he needed. Kai stood in wonder. Someone, or something, had known he was a canoe builder, had known he would need koa, had guided him here with their path, had marked the trees for him. He placed his hand on one of the trees, felt its strength, its readiness, and he whispered mahalo to the tree, to the builders, to the island itself. That night, as he worked on the canoe back in the village, shaping the hull with careful strokes of his adze, he thought about the builders, about their precision, their patience, their attention to detail. And he worked more slowly, more carefully, matching his rhythm to theirs, finding the same quiet joy in creation, the same satisfaction in work done well. And his canoe, when finished, was the best he had ever made, strong and light, balanced and swift, as if the builder's care had somehow transferred to his hands, as if their attention had taught him something without words. The children began leaving offerings, small things. A woven flower lay placed on the stone wall, a perfect shell positioned on one of the fish pond stones. A tiny figure carved from driftwood, left at the beginning of the forest path. The adults smiled at these gestures, and yet privately, many of them began leaving offerings too, not from obligation, but from gratitude. The island understanding that gifts should be reciprocated, that balance requires exchange, that generosity creates generosity. And every morning, the offerings were gone, not scattered, not disturbed, simply gone, accepted, received. And in their place, sometimes, there would be something new, a small carved stone, a polished shell, a woven grass bracelet, gifts in return, acknowledgement, connection. A silent conversation between the seen and the unseen, between those who build and those who benefit, between the island and its people. It became a ritual, a practice woven into daily life. The village would leave offerings in the evening. By morning, they would be gone, and sometimes, not always, but sometimes, a gift would be left in return, and the village would marvel and give thanks and continue their gentle lives. Leilani became a gatherer of plants. She walked the forest paths, the ones that had appeared, and she learned which leaves would heal, which roots would sustain, which flowers would bless. The paths led deep into the island's interior, to springs with clear water, to groves where fruit grew wild, to places she would never have found without the stones to guide her. And as she walked, she began to notice things. The paths did not go everywhere. They were selective, intentional. They led to safe places, to abundant places. And yet they avoided certain areas that felt sacred somehow, protected, as if whoever made the paths was saying, "This is for you, but this is not. This must remain undisturbed." Leilani respected these boundaries, never pushing beyond where the paths led, never trying to see what was meant to remain hidden. And one afternoon, as she walked, she found something that took her breath away. A shelter built with stones and covered with palm fronds, just large enough for one person to rest inside, out of the sun, out of the rain. She had walked this path many times. The shelter had not been there the day before. She stepped inside. The air was cool, the ground was dry, and in the corner, arranged carefully, were three things: a gourd filled with water, a woven mat to sit on, and a small bowl containing fresh mountain apples. Leilani sat down slowly. She drank the water, she ate one of the apples, and she wept, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming beauty of being cared for, of being known, of being tended by hands she would never see, by presences who asked for nothing, who simply gave because giving seemed to be their nature. She whispered mahalo, her voice breaking, and she felt somehow that it was heard. That evening, she told Nalani what she had found, and Nalani smiled. In the old stories, she said, the builders make what is needed. They see what we need before we know we need it. They are the island's way of caring for itself, for us, for all who live here. And we honor them by receiving gracefully, by giving thanks, by living as they seem to live, with care, with attention, with love. The builders, if the stories are true, work with a method that seems impossible. They do not measure, they do not plan with drawings, they simply know. One night, young Makoa could not sleep. He was restless, curious, and he slipped outside. The village was dark and quiet, and in the distance, he could see the golden lights. He moved towards them slowly, quietly, more quietly than he had ever moved, and he found a spot behind a large fern where he could watch without being seen. The builders were working on a retaining wall, reinforcing a slope that had been eroding. There were perhaps 20 of them, small figures, moving quickly, working together with perfect coordination. And Makoa watched, fascinated as they worked. One builder would examine the slope, running small hands over the earth, feeling its texture, its stability, its needs. And then that builder would make a sound, a soft chirp, and another builder would bring a stone. Not just any stone, the perfect stone, the exact size and shape needed for that spot. And the first builder would place it, testing the fit, adjusting slightly, and when it was right, when it sat perfectly, the builder would tap it 3 times. Tap, 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 and the next stone would arrive. They worked like this for hours, never stopping, never rushing, just steady, patient, rhythmic work. And Makoa saw that they were not just building, they were listening, feeling, responding to the earth itself. The earth told them what it needed, and they provided it. Simple, perfect, a conversation between builder and land, between care and need, between small hands and ancient stone. When dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, the builders worked faster, not frantically, but with increased purpose. They placed the last few stones quickly, tamped the earth around them, and then, one by one, they gathered their lights and they disappeared into the forest. So quickly that Makoa blinked and they were gone, as if they had never been there. And yet the wall remained, solid, real, perfect. Makoa returned to his home, and he carried what he had seen, the knowledge that building is listening, that caring is paying attention, that the best work comes from understanding what is needed, not from imposing what you think should be. And he never forgot it. The seasons change slowly on Kauaʻi. There is no winter, no autumn, only the wet season when the rains come often, and the dry season when they come less. And yet even these changes are gentle, gradual. The island shifts from one state to the other with barely a pause. And through it all, the builders continue during the wet season, when streams swell and threaten to flood. New channels appear overnight, stone-lined channels, guiding water safely, preventing erosion, protecting the taro fields. In the stories, the builders know where water wants to go. They do not fight it. They guide it gently, carefully, creating paths for the water to follow, paths that serve both water and land. During the dry season, when water becomes precious, springs that were hidden are suddenly accessible. Paths lead to them. Stone steps descend to the water. Small pools are created to hold the water, making it easy to gather, to carry, to use wisely. The builders, if they truly exist, seem to anticipate, to plan, to work months ahead of need, so that when the dry season comes, the water is already accessible, already prepared, already offered. The people notice these things. They see the care, the attention, the quiet love that shapes their world. And they respond in kind. They work more gently with the land. They take only what they need. They give back more than they take. They help each other more often, in small ways, without being asked. A net is mended in secret. Firewood is stacked outside an elder's home. A roof is repaired whilst the owner is away. Acts of service done quietly, anonymously, following the example set by the unseen builders. The village becomes softer, kinder, more peaceful, and the island flourishes. There are nights when the builders can be heard more clearly than others. Nights when the wind is still, when the ocean is calm, when the island holds its breath. On those nights, the tapping is distinct. Tap, 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 stone on stone, and the voices are clearer, high voices, quick voices, speaking in that flowing language. And sometimes, if you listen very carefully, you can hear the rhythm, the pattern. 1 tap for placement, 2 taps for adjustment, 3 taps for completion. And between the tapping, the soft sounds of movement, small feet on earth, stones being lifted, passed, placed, the rustle of grass, the whisper of leaves, the breathing of the builders themselves. Quick breaths, steady breaths, the breath of those engaged in work they love. And occasionally, laughter, soft laughter, the joy of working together, of building something beautiful, of caring for a place they love. The villagers learn to listen for these sounds. They become a comfort, a lullaby, a reassurance that all is well, that the island is tended, that balance is maintained. The children fall asleep to the tapping. The adults wake in the night and smile at the distant sounds. The elders listen and remember their own childhoods, remember their grandparents telling the same stories. Remember that this has been happening for as long as anyone can recall, and will continue long after they are gone. The builders in the stories are eternal, as much a part of the island as the mountains, as the ocean, as the rain. Nalani teaches the young ones about reciprocity, about balance, about the way care flows between the seen and unseen. She tells them that in all the tellings, the builders do not ask for payment, do not demand recognition, and yet they seem to notice gratitude. They seem to appreciate respect, and they seem to respond to care with more care. When the village keeps the evenings quiet, the builders work more. When offerings are left, new structures appear more frequently. When the people tend the land gently, the builders tend it more completely. It is not transactional. Nalani says it is relational, a dance of mutual care, of shared love for this place. The builders teach by example, she says. They show us how to work, quietly, patiently, anonymously, without need for praise, without desire for recognition, simply doing what needs to be done, because it needs to be done, because the island deserves care, because care is its own reward. And we, she says, we can live the same way. We can work quietly. We can give anonymously. We can serve without expectation. We can tend our relationships, our homes, our hearts, the same way the builders tend the island, with patience, with attention, with love. The young ones listen, and they understand, and slowly, over time, they become like the builders, not in size, not in ability, but in spirit, in approach, in the quiet joy of serving something larger than themselves. There came a time when storms approached the island. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The wind shifted. The ocean swelled. The village prepared. They secured their homes, moved things inside, gathered their families, and they waited. The storm arrived at night. Wind tore through the palms. Rain fell in sheets. The ocean rose higher than usual. Thunder rolled across the mountains. And yet through it all, even through the storm, the tapping continued, faint, barely audible beneath the wind and rain. And yet there, tap, tap, tap. The builders were working, even in the storm, reinforcing, protecting, tending. And when the storm finally passed, when the wind calmed and the rain stopped and the sun emerged, the people found something remarkable. The damage was minimal. Yes, some palm fronds were scattered, some minor repairs were needed, and yet the structures that mattered, the walls, the fish pond, the channels, all stood firm. And in some places, they were stronger. New stones had been added during the storm, reinforcements placed, weak points shored up. The builders, if the stories were true, had worked through the chaos, had protected what needed protecting, had turned potential disaster into an opportunity to strengthen. The villagers wept with gratitude, not because they had been saved from all harm, but because they had not been abandoned. Because even in the storm, even in the difficulty, someone or something had been there, working, caring, tending, faithful, and they understood more deeply than ever that the island holds them always, in calm and in storm, in ease and in challenge. The care continues, always. Time moves gently on Kauaʻi. The children grow, become adults, have children of their own, and the cycle continues. And through it all, the builders work. Generation after generation of villagers, century after century of tending. The stone walls stand. The paths remain clear. The structures endure, because they are built with love, with attention, with a kind of care that lasts. Keahi teaches his son about the fish pond, about the stones the builders placed, about the importance of gratitude, and his son teaches his son, and the knowledge continues. Leilani teaches her daughter about the forest paths, about the boundaries the builders maintain, about the balance between taking and giving. And her daughter teaches her daughter, and the wisdom continues. Kai teaches his nephew about canoe building, about listening to the wood, about patience, about working with the same care the builders show, and his nephew teaches others, and the craft continues. The village becomes a living example of what is possible when care is prioritized, when patience is practiced, when service is given freely. Other villages hear the stories. Travelers come to see. They marvel at the stonework, at the abundance, at the peace. And some ask, how? How do you maintain this? How do you create such harmony? And the villagers smile gently. We work quietly. They say, we give freely. We receive gratefully. We honor the night. We create silence. We tend the land. And we trust that care will be returned. Some travelers understand. They return to their villages and begin practicing the same things. Quiet evenings, anonymous service, respectful work, offerings of gratitude. And in those places, slowly, gently, balance improves. The practice spreads, not through force, not through preaching, but through example, through the simple power of care made visible, through the transformation that happens when people live in harmony with the land, with each other, with the unseen forces that tend all things. The forest paths on Kauaʻi wind deep into the interior now. They have been growing for, who can say how long, stone by stone, night by night, sections added slowly, revealing new places, new springs, new groves, new beauty. The paths are a gift that keeps giving. Each generation discovers something new, something their parents did not know, something that has been decided, somehow, to be revealed. Young Makoa, now grown, with children of his own, walks the paths often, and he finds new sections appearing, leading to places he has never been. places of incredible beauty, hidden waterfalls, groves of fragrant flowers, clearings where the light falls perfectly. And he brings his children, teaches them to walk quietly, to notice, to appreciate, to leave offerings, to whisper mahalo, and his children feel it, the presence, the care, the love woven into every stone, and they understand, without being told, that they are part of something larger, something ancient, something that will continue long after they are gone. And they are humbled, grateful, blessed. At night, when the village sleeps, the builders continue their work. They emerge from the forest, from the mountains, from wherever they rest during the day. Small figures moving with purpose, carrying their golden lights, speaking in their flowing language. And they build, stone by stone, structure by structure, tending the island they love. They work in teams. Some gather stones, some carry them, some place them, some tamp the earth around them, all working together with perfect coordination. No arguments, no competition, just cooperation, just shared purpose, just the quiet joy of building something that will last. They do not grow tired. They do not complain. They simply work with the same patience they have shown for as long as the stories tell, with the same care they will show for as long as the island stands, eternal, faithful, constant. And when dawn approaches, when the sky begins to lighten in the east, they gather their lights, they exchange soft words, and they disappear back into the forest, back into the mountains, back into mystery, leaving only their work behind, only the evidence of their care, only the gift of their love made visible in stone. The ocean breathes against the shore, in and out, in and out, a rhythm as old as time. The trade winds whisper through the palms, the forests hold their stillness, the mountains stand quiet, and beneath it all, woven through it all, there is the tapping, stone on stone, soft, steady, eternal, tap, 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 the heartbeat of the island, the pulse of care, the promise that nothing is forgotten, that all is tended, that balance endures. The builders work, and the island rests, and the people sleep, knowing they are held, knowing they are loved, knowing that when morning comes, the island will be a little more whole, a little more beautiful, a little more balanced. Because hands they rarely see, hearts they can only imagine, continue their work, quietly, patiently, faithfully, night after night, stone by stone, forever. The quiet builders of Kauaʻi, tending their island, caring for all who live here, asking nothing, giving everything, stone by stone, night by night, the tapping continues, soft and steady, eternal and patient. Tap, 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 stone on stone, night on night, care upon care. The island breathes, the ocean whispers, the builders work, and all is well, all is cared for, all is held in the darkness, in the stillness, in the gentle hands that shape the world whilst you sleep. Tap, 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 stone on stone, night on night, care upon care, forever.